talk about what the tariffs are going to do. In one case, we know exactly what his tariffs did the first time, 1.9% inflation. We know exactly, that's where it was. That's where it was. The other thing, Mark, I still think immigration and illegal immigration is a huge drain on a lot of the jobs that we've added. There's been no net gain among natural born. I'm not saying I don't want immigration. We all love immigration. It's made this. We're all immigrants. We're all descended from immigrants. But I don't think you can have an open southern border.
No, I agree. And she agrees, too. She said the exact same thing.
She had a chance.
Yeah, but, Joe, you know there's a lot of COOs that when the CEO leaves for whatever reason, come in, take over, and have completely different policies and approaches. Right? That's just the way it works. When you're second in command, you do what your boss tells you to do. He delegates authority to you.
But the border was supposed to be her.
Yeah, but it's still the same thing. It's his policies. What he said to her was, you go down and you use diplomacy to try to improve, to try to reduce the flow, the migration of people across the border, right? And when they finally came around, and it took too long, I agree, but when they finally got there, now look at the results. It didn't take a wall, but yet the crossing numbers are where Trump's were when pre-pandemic, at the same number. So it worked. So what she did actually worked, right?
When she was unable to answer the question about are you better off now than 4 years ago, I think that was illustrative.
Well, 4 years ago, literally, we were in a pandemic. It was an easy answer.
We can look at exactly what happened. He's already been president. And we can look at what happened when she was vice president. And it's not good, the comparison.
Being the president, Joe, as you know, is different than being vice president. It's not close, right?
So she can take credit for the good things that happened with Biden, but she didn't have anything to do with the bad things. Trump in the past, there have been Democrats that have voted not to certify.
Yeah, that's fine.
Many times.
Right? That's fine. But
previous election,
none of them called their vice president said don't certify the election.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about delusional, Trump deranged Mark Cuban, who may be the dumbest billionaire on the planet because this guy is openly now a full-blown Kamala Harris surrogate, okay? He's basically doing what Gavin Newsom was trying to do for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris just a year ago when people thought that Gavin Newsom could take over for Joe Biden. Gavin Newsom was everywhere, okay? He was doing interviews on Fox, on CNN. He was showing up to the GOP debates. This guy was everywhere, okay? Because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris could not sell the shit sandwich that is the Biden-Harris agenda to the American people anymore, right? So they had to get somebody else to do it, right? A better snake oil salesman than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, which was Gavin Newsom at the time. Now, Mark Cuban is playing that role because he has basically bought Kamala Harris, political prostitution at its finest, because as a billionaire, there's no doubt in my mind that Mark Cuban has given Kamala Harris a ton of money in exchange for some position of power or influence, right? When it comes to policy, maybe a government position.
But I ask you, Mark, whether you would entertain being a Treasury Secretary, Commerce Secretary in a Harris administration.
Head of the SEC. Head of the SEC. That's the job I would take.
Yeah. So what you're seeing here is the essence of politics, how things work in Washington. Again, because the politicians are basically prostitutes at this point, and they sell themselves to the highest bidder. Okay. Mark Cuban apparently was the highest bidder for Kamala Harris, and now he's running around as a full-blown surrogate for Kamala Harris, pretending as if she is some type of centrist, right? And that she has a grasp of the economy and that she's going to do a great job running the country and that she's so much better than former President Trump. However, we know that that's not the reality, okay? Mark Cuban isn't doing this because he actually feels like Kamala Harris is competent. No, he's doing this because he is pulling the strings of Kamala Harris. He's able to control her, and he's just looking out for his own best interests, right? He tried to do that with Trump, but Trump rejected him. Trump told him to kick rocks, okay? I went over this story before. Mark Cuban tried to give Trump advice, and Mark Cuban was rejected by Trump. Trump said, listen, I don't need your advice. I don't need your money, okay? Mark tried to buy Donald Trump, and Trump said no.
Like we were talking about this one debate for CNBC that he wasn't going to be at. And I'm like, Donald.
Not going, Mark.
Not going.
It's not happening.
I'm like, Donald, why don't you go to a local small business and sit there at the table and just show off your business chops, right? And show people your business. He goes, Mark, Donald Trump and Mark Cuban don't go to people's houses and have dinner. Are you kidding me? That's who he is. right? When we talked about what's he going to do with the ground game, now I got all these religious people who are going to do the work for me.
Yeah, so Mark Cuban has been extremely Trump deranged since then, okay? And that leads me to this video of Mark Cuban going on CNBC, right? This panel has not been very Kamala Harris friendly lately, especially when it comes to her economic policies. And he's going to run into a buzzsaw, right? Because this panel is not going to buy into the BS that he's trying to sell them, that he's been selling on MSNBC and CNN. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Vice President Kamala Harris sitting down for one of her first one-on-one network interviews since becoming the Democratic nominee for president. Here's an exchange that she had with MSNBC's Stephanie Ruhle about tariffs.
Tariffs aren't unique to President Trump. President Biden has tariffs in place. He's actually looking to potentially implement more. Where do you come out on? Is there a good tariff, a bad tariff?
Well, part of it is you don't just throw around the idea of just tariffs across the board, and that's part of the problem with Donald Trump. Frankly, I'm going to, and I say this in all sincerity, he's just not very serious about how he thinks about some of these issues. And one must be serious and have a plan, and a real plan that's not just about some talking point ending in an exclamation at a political rally, but actually putting the thought into what will be the return on the investment and what will be the economic impact on everyday people.
Yeah, so here's the problem with Kamala Harris and their talking points on tariffs, okay? Because she's claiming that Trump is just throwing around tariffs across the board. And that's actually not what he's doing. What Trump is doing is that he's using tariffs as a negotiating tool. Is Trump going to apply tariffs across the board? No, that's not happening. What he's actually doing is that he's letting some of these countries know, like cough, cough, China, that, hey, when I get back in office, we're not playing anymore, right? In regards to protecting certain American businesses and industries, good, high-paying jobs, right? And we're going to strategically use tariffs in order to protect certain industries. Now, am I a fan of tariffs? No, I'm not a fan of tariffs, okay? But I do understand the strategic use of them, which is what Trump did under his first administration. Some people agree with it. Some people don't agree with it. He focused on steel and aluminum under first Trump administration. And apparently Democrats agree with them, right? Because Democrats kept Trump's tariffs in place, right? That's what they did. Okay. So Democrats can't come out here and to criticize Trump on tariffs when they agree with what Trump did, right? And what's funny is that under Trump, his tariffs did not increase inflation. Yes, there are some goods and services like washing machines and stuff like that that got a little bit more expensive because of the tariffs, right? But across the board, goods did not become more expensive. Inflation was damn near non-existent under President Trump because he strategically applied the tariffs, right? He did not do so in a way that would raise prices across the board, and he's not doing that in his second term, right? Anybody suggesting anything different is just being intellectually dishonest. Trump is a negotiator. He's a businessman. This is a negotiation, and he's coming in strong to the negotiating table, okay? That is what he's doing right now. And this is what Trump does on foreign policy. Anything having to do with foreign countries, Trump is negotiating all the time, right? So when you're negotiating, you're going to start off from a place where, you know, we all know, okay, that's not what you actually really want. And then you're going to get to where you actually want to be as the negotiations continue into the future, right? But I think what the goal has to be is for us to become less dependent on China and to manufacture certain key goods in the United States of America, again, while strengthening our relationship with our strategic partners in Southeast Asia to continue to establish that independence from China, right? I think that's what the goal should be. But regardless, Democrats talking trash about Trump's tariffs while also at the same time supporting them is hilarious to me, right? Trump tariffs bad, ours good, even though you're basically just copying Trump, right? If Trump tariffs was so bad, then why do you support them, right? It's just so funny how these Democrats think that people are stupid.
Got a lot of ground to cover with our next guest. Want to bring in Mark Cuban for his takeaways. Mark is a billionaire investor, of course, entrepreneur, is also a supporter of Vice President Harris. So we know where you stand. I'm curious, listening to her there, and you called in a couple weeks ago to talk about what you thought she would be telling the public. And we quizzed you. We went back a little back and forth about just how much you knew versus what the public knew. How much more do you think the public knows now? And how much more do you think the public should know?
Well, I think obviously they know more. She's talking more. She's giving speeches. She was very clear about tariffs right there. And she's got 40 days to communicate other things. Remember, think of this as a business and she's the CEO. She went from lack of favorability, lack of awareness, and way behind Donald Trump, right, to here we are 50 days later from where she started. She's at worst tied, right? People on her economic policy, she was behind Trump 25%. Now she's behind 11%. So she's making progress. And if she just continues along that trend, the trend is her friend, it means she's doing the right things. And so she'll keep on communicating new ideas, new elements. She was a lot more specific on tariffs and where she stands. The difference between her and Donald Trump, to her point, Donald Trump will say what fits to the audience. When I talk to her team about different things, whether it's healthcare, whether it's tariffs, whatever it may be, she goes back and her team does a full analysis. She doesn't just say yes or no. They really dig into what she said. What's the impact?
But there is a critique that actually she will say whatever the audience wants, right? I mean, we look at the tipping, the tipping thing
right.
that took place in Nevada. Given some of the details that we don't have on certain things, is that because some of those details would be less favorable in certain audiences?
Do you see the Elon quote? I don't know what you think of Elon, but
I like Elon.
I like Elon too. But she was at 28% favorability,
right.
And then, as you say, things change. She's all the way up to about 50%. I would just argue that filling in the blanks does not account for that move, and that the media coverage has been so positive and almost, Mark, that it's like, we don't have to worry about trying to elect this guy who is clearly not up for another 4 years. And it's not Donald Trump. So they would have, the left and the people that need a candidate would have embraced anyone at that point. And ABC, it was 100% positive coverage of her, 92% negative of Trump. So Elon says, what changed the media coverage?
Ding, 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 ding. I love this. I love this, okay? Because Mark Cuban, again, he's living in Cocoa Puffs world, right? First and foremost, he basically claims that, well, Trump will just say whatever people want to hear, right, in order to get a vote. But that's literally what Kamala Harris is doing right now. Her whole campaign is just her saying whatever she needs to say to get elected, right? And it's funny because Mark Cuban essentially admitted that before in past CNBC interviews, in which he basically said that, yeah, Kamala Harris behind closed doors, she's telling billionaires like me different things than she's telling the public, right? So you shouldn't believe Kamala Harris when she comes out here and talks about price controls and the unrealized capital gains tax. I mean, Cocoa Puff, crazy things. Don't believe it, because behind closed doors, she's telling me something different, right? This is basically what the dude said out loud. Now he's saying, well, Trump is the guy that's just telling you what you want to hear. It's not Kamala. Well, explain to me, why is it that Kamala basically has flip-flopped on almost every position that she had back in 2019, right? When it comes to the border, when it comes to crime, when it comes to basically all of her policies, healthcare, everything, she's flip-flopped. Why did she do the flip-flop if she's not just telling people what she thinks they want to hear, right? Why isn't she the same person that she was in 2019? She hasn't explained it. She hasn't come out here and explained why she's changed her viewpoints, because she hasn't, right? Believe her when she tells you, my values haven't changed. I still believe in all those things that I said, right? That's what she believes in, okay? And she's just telling people what they want to hear in order to get elected. Furthermore, Kamala Harris is not doing well right now compared to her predecessors, Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, but the success that she has so far is not because of her, it's because of the media, right? It's because the media has covered Trump negatively about 100% of the time and Kamala Harris positively about 100% of the time, right? So she's a creation of the media. It's not because she's doing well. It's not because she is doing well despite fair criticism and neutral journalism. No, she's getting a boost from the media, and she's still basically in a tie race. If anything, I don't even think it's tied. I think Trump is actually winning. I think if the election was held today, Trump would win. So don't sit and try to tell me that, oh, she's doing great because people are buying into her message. No, she's only doing great because the media is fluffing her up, as this panel rightfully points out.
Okay, first, what's the most watched news channel? Who are the most watched and viewed and listened to podcasts? Who are the most watched and listened to or
Is it
viewed?
Fox?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
I mean, it's not close. right? The #1 shows are all Fox. The #1 podcast lean right.
Even in spite of that, she's been able to.
Not in spite of that, meaning, well, in spite of that, meaning the mainstream media is not who you think it is.
Wow. Again, this is sophistry, right? This is sophistry. Mark Cuban is essentially arguing, well, since Fox News is the biggest network, therefore the liberal media ain't liberal, right? The liberal media is more right-leaning, more conservative, when that's an absolute lie. When you look at the media as a whole, it's Fox News, Newsmax, and maybe you could throw OANN in there, right? But when you look at their audiences, their total reach compared to the media as a whole, when you combine MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, all these networks, CBS, when you combine all these networks that are overwhelmingly liberal, all of their journalists are overwhelmingly Democrat, it is obvious that these people are voting Democrat. When you look at the total viewership across the board on the liberal outlets, it surpasses Fox News, right? And that is what Mark Cuban is leaving out. He's essentially arguing that because Fox News doesn't have that much competition, that means that the media is overwhelmingly right-wing, or they're more right-wing or conservative than we think. And that's just total nonsense, right? It's total BS. This guy is delusional, right? He's delusional.
The mainstream media truly leans right.
Maybe that's why it's only tied then.
Well, maybe, right?
I don't know.
The mainstream media leans right. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Again, this guy, he might be the dumbest billionaire on the planet.
Where do you think she really is in terms of what this election is, in terms of the polls and the betting? Do you look more at betting sites?
No,
what do you look at?
Like, I'm an investor in Polymarket, right?
Okay.
Through a fund, and U.S. citizens can't bet on there, right? So it's kind of a meaningless number. Now, predicted, I haven't really followed, so I don't know.
Right. I was, we've disagreed on things. We go back and forth sometimes on Twitter. I just think I don't know whether it's good or bad that there are half the people that under no circumstances, no matter what, would ever vote for Donald Trump.
Can you imagine why?
On the other half, this is where I'm getting.
Okay.
On the other half, there are half the people that under no circumstances can look at what her comments have been in the past, and there's just, for whatever, just having gone back to, with me, the Dukakis days, the McGovern days, there's just no way that, and I'm not speaking for what I would do now, but there are people who think it's so patently far left and progressive, they would never, under any circumstances, vote for Kamala Harris. And here we are.
Right.
Have you convinced anyone to change?
Yeah, of course.
You've convinced people to change?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, I can't convince
Right, because
anyone.
here's what I say, right? Here's what I think is happening. She's learned, all of politics has learned from Donald Trump over the last 10 years. The way politics were done pre-2016 versus now is night and day difference. Not so much in the Democratic Party up until Kamala Harris. She learned what he did. He took over the Republican Party. The way the Republicans were in 2015 is nothing like they are in 2024. Now the Republican Party has basically become the family business. Kamala Harris has learned from that. She's basically taken over the Democratic Party.
That does not sound like a good thing, Mark.
It may or may not be, right? But it's a reality, right? In order to win, she said yesterday, she's not an ideologue. She's open to all ideas from everybody, from business, whoever. That's important. That's the difference. And when you listen to her talk, we talked about Donald Trump. Her team really does vet, even if it's no tax on tips. They vet the whole thing, and it's very considered.
But there's not going to be
but when Bernie Sanders said she'll say anything, did the rest of the Democratic Party just go, "You idiots, shut up"? What are you doing? Because he said she'll move to the center, but she still holds dear all the things he holds dear.
Have you seen
facts? That's exactly what he said. He said that she's being pragmatic, right? This is why she's abandoning her progressive values, right? Bernie said, listen, I don't really believe she's abandoning them. I think that she's still a progressive. She's just right now being pragmatic, right? She's telling people what they want to hear, right? Bernie Sanders said this out loud, admittedly, okay? Also, Joe Biden admitted that he gave Kamala Harris responsibility over domestic and foreign issues. So when people like Mark Cuban come out here and try to say, well, as VP, she should take credit for all the good things that Biden does or that he did, and she's not responsible for all the bad stuff, again, it's BS, right? Because Biden himself said that, hey, I put Kamala in charge, okay? Kamala had leeway and say so over a lot of things that happened during this disastrous administration. And that's something that you're not going to be able to get around, right? You're not going to be able to snake oil salesman your way through this, Mark Cuban. You're not going to, okay? Mark Cuban has signed up for a hard job, right? To sell a shit sandwich to the American people. He's tried his best to do so, but there's just too much on Kamala Harris for him to do that in a way that's credible.
Her talk to or about or with Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders.
That could be calculated too, Mark.
It could be calculated. That's right. And it wouldn't be a bad move.
No,
But
it'd be a great move.
I truly believe she's gone.
What do you think of the fact that
really?
Yeah, because the country, she believes and knows that the country needs to come together.
She's not in the center, right? She's definitely not in the center. She is in the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren camp. She's staying away from them because she knows that being around them or being seen with them would expose her act, right? She's trying to act like she's a centrist, but she's not. When you come out here and you talk about getting rid of the filibuster, that's not something a centrist would say, right? That's not something a moderate would say. So she's not fooling anybody, right? Mark Cuban is not fooling anybody. This dude is a snake oil salesman. He is just trying to get a position, right? And he's trying to sell the American people a shit sandwich for him to get a job as the head of the SEC. Again, it's corruption, political corruption, right in your face. This dude is mad that he could not buy Trump the same way that he bought Kamala Harris. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.